Members, we come to the debate on the clauses. The question is that clauses 1 and 2 stand part. The Honourable David Parker.
Mr Chairman, I think I'm not going to take a long call on this. The points that have been made as to our objection to the legislation have been made in respect of the various parts that have been discussed previously, particularly our concerns about production orders and examination orders generally, but also particularly in relation to the Serious Fraud Office version of those powers, which is without the protections that are in this legislation insofar as the police have been conferred similar powers. Mr Chairman, I think it is sad that a piece of legislation that is so fundamental to the balance of power between individuals and the state is being passed tonight with majorities of 61 to 59. And I think it's pretty clear that if there had been some movement of the government on the part of Serious Fraud Office powers, we could have had close to, had a very big majority for this sort of legislation. And this sort of legislation ought to enjoy large parliamentary majorities rather than slip through at a majority of 61 to 59. Mr Speaker, the introductory note in the commentary from the Justice and Electoral Committee said this bill is intended to implement a comprehensive reform of search and surveillance legislation, both as regards the core substantive law enforcement powers and the way search powers are exercised across the statute book. And as Charles Chauvel, my colleague, said when he quoted that same provision earlier in the debate, the fact that this isn't doing that, I think, is lamentable. We have one institution in New Zealand that can exercise its powers without needing to get a warrant from a judge in respect of the exercise of serious powers, including powers that underride the right to silence, and that one institution is the Serious Fraud Office. Not the Security Intelligence Service. They have to get a warrant from the retired High Court judge who oversees their processes. Not the police. They have to get a warrant. And indeed, for production and examination orders, they just can't get a warrant from a registrar. They've got to get a warrant from a judge. And yet we have this exception for the Serious Fraud Office, who don't need to get a warrant from anyone, who have abused their powers in the past by using them against the media, who have abused their powers more often by utilising the production order and examination route, which is easier for them because they can do it from internal administrative act than going for a warrant or using normal administrative processes. Orders which can be quite broad and put quite a lot of administrative costs on the people who are in receipt of those production and examination orders. So, Mr Chairman, I'm not going to say anything more than that. I think, other than that, broadly this legislation does strike the right balance between the civil liberties that we should be protecting for people and the powers that the police on occasions need to investigate crimes so as to keep our public safe.
Members, the question is that Clause 1 stand part. Those of that opinion will say aye. To the contrary, no. The ayes have it. Party votes called for. I'll ask the clerk for a party vote.
New Zealand National.
59 votes in favour.
New Zealand Labour.
34 votes opposed.
Green Party.
14 votes opposed.
New Zealand First.
8 opposed.
Māori Party.
2 votes opposed.
Mana.
1 vote opposed.
ACT New Zealand.
1 in favour.
United Future.
1 in favour.
Members, the ayes are 61, the noes are 59. Clause 1 will stand part. We now come to Clause 2. We have the Minister's amendment to replace Clause 2 as set out on SOP number 12. The question is that the Minister's amendment as set out on SOP number 12 be agreed to. Those of that opinion will say aye. Aye. Contrary, no. The ayes have it. The ayes have it. Party votes called for. I'll ask the clerk for a party vote.
New Zealand National.
59 votes in favour.
New Zealand Labour.
34 votes opposed.
Green Party.
14 votes opposed.
New Zealand First.
8 opposed.
Māori Party.
2 opposed.
Mana.
1 vote opposed.
ACT New Zealand.
1 in favour.
United Future.
1 in favour.
Members, the ayes are 61, the noes are 59. The Minister's amendment is agreed to. I will report this bill with amendment.
The House is resumed. Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Speaker, the committee has considered the search and surveillance bill and reports it with amendment. Mr. Speaker, I move that the report be adopted.
The question is that the report be adopted. Those of that opinion will say aye. To the contrary, no. The ayes have it. This bill is set down for third reading next sitting day. Call on Government Orders of the Day numbers 4 and 5.